What's up YouTube? This is the start of a new video series where for every Series 3 card I will highlight some of the best decks that you can build around that card as you progress throughout your collection. But first of all, let's start it simple. The first card I picked was Death, and now let's assume Death was the very first card that you unlocked in Series 3. What is the best deck that you can build around her right away? And to no big surprise, it is a fully destroy-centered deck. You want to make use of the discount as much as possible, while at the same time controlling the board of your opponent with cards like Killmonger, with cards like Shang-Chi, and sometimes even Yondu for a little disruption as well as information. Besides that, the deck is pretty self-explanatory. We have a lot of great destruction targets in Bucky Barnes, Wolverine, and Sabretooth, as well as Nova. I really like Squirrel Girl as a flexible tech choice. It can either give you 3 destroy stacks and discounts on Death right away if you target her with Killmonger, or 2 of the squirrels can still be great buff targets if Nova gets gobbled up by a Carnage or a Deathlock in one other location. So pretty straightforward as well as fun and interactive deck to play early on. Not necessarily one of the strongest decks I would say, but we can very quickly get into tier 1 territory with Death as a card. And I'm mostly thinking of the Bayrow deck list here, which a lot of players think to be the best deck in the game. Of course, some metas are rather hostile against this deck, while in other metas it can really shine. But throughout the course of Marvel Snap history, this has been considered a tier 1 deck by most players and most meta tier lists and so on. And the main reason here is the crazy good combination with Wave as well as Death. Wave discounts Death's base cost down to 4, but the additional discounts of the destroyed cards still apply. So as long as we destroyed at least 4 cards throughout the course of the game, Death is gonna cost 0 after Wave gets played. And in a perfect world, we can play Wave on turn 5, sacrificing 2 mana, which also makes She-Hulk cost 4 minus 2 mana on that final turn 6, which means we can play Death for 0, She-Hulk for 2, and still play one of our other late game bombs, either Leader or Arrow, to completely blow our opponent out of the game because they can only play 1 card. Only card to really watch out for here is our opponent's Leader, since they can just copy our big stuff. Besides that, most of the early game cards should look familiar from the previous deck, with Hood being a very nice addition from Series 3 as well. Now let's say you don't have all of these cards yet, what could you replace them with? The only absolute core card here is Wave to enable the Death combo. Arrow, Leader, and She-Hulk can all be replaced with other late game bombs. One very popular replacement for She-Hulk, for example, would be Magneto. But you can also just play any other strong 5 and 6 drops that you like in these slots. For example, even Captain Marvel or Vision in the 5-drop slot. Something like Hulk would technically even work instead of Leader. Other ideas for early game flexibility, a very easy find here is Nova, for example, instead of the Hood. And Mysterio is also a very interesting tech choice. The next spicy deck that I want to showcase is a Deadpool combo deck. The idea here is the perfect synergy of Deadpool repeatedly returning to your hand when being destroyed and just being destroy fodder over and over again, therefore also reducing Death's energy cost over and over. The other combo here is making Deadpool grow pretty large power-wise, or even gobbling him up with Venom and creating a very large Venom, then copying that power with Taskmaster immediately without having to destroy your own cards again. And a great alternative target for Taskmaster to copy power off of would be Death herself with 12 power. So the absolute core cards you want to have in the deck so that it's somewhat competitive are Deadpool, Death, and Taskmaster. Venom is also a pretty strong choice. It's not the end of the world if you don't have him though. The Hood could be replaced with something like Squirrel Girl, similar ideas in the previous decks, and Mysterio and Venom could, for example, be swapped out for Wolverine and Sabretooth. Hulkbuster is also a pretty cute combo card here that makes Deadpool grow in power immensely and makes it much easier for him to grow to huge values. If you want to delve a bit deeper into that style of play, you could also play Forge or Okoye. The next deck that I want to showcase is a Galactus deck, and I'm missing quite a couple of cards here, so I gotta go over to marvelsnapzone.com to show you all of the cards in the deck. This one's pretty competitive as well. This version comes straight from their meta tier list that was freshly released, and they rank it as a tier 2 deck. And the core idea here is that we somewhat sacrifice the early game, don't really play too much. Electro is the first very key card, giving us an additional energy per turn, and ideally that allows us to play Galactus a bit earlier than usual. For example, example, already on turn 5, blowing up all of the other locations. And if our opponent doesn't really see it coming, the Galactus effect on its own might already discount death to 0 mana. The other cool effect here is that if Electro gets destroyed, the ongoing effect is also gone. We can play multiple cards per turn again. So on turn 6, we could play, for example, Knoll, heavily benefiting from all of the cards that got destroyed earlier, as well as death for 0 mana. Another cool thing here is that we will often not have priority on the final turn. Our opponent will have to reveal first, so we can often play something like Shang-Chi followed up with death to destroy their big stuff in that last remaining location, while we can still play our big stuff safely. Some other cute combos here are Wave on turn 3 allows us to play Galactus even on turn 4, and then we can follow up with Dr. Octopus on turn 5, clogging our opponent's location immediately and giving us all the agency over the outcome of the game. Now, there are quite a couple of key cards here, that's why the deck is fairly expensive. You definitely want Galactus, and he is a Series 5 card, not that easy to obtain. Additionally, you surely want Electro for the ramp synergy, and Wave would be a great find as well, although not an absolute must. Same can be said for Destroyer. It's a great alternative game plan if you don't find Galactus. You can go Electro into Destroyer early on, destroying Electro again, and allowing you to play multiple cards afterwards. All of the early game is pretty flexible. You can pretty much replace these cards with whatever you like, ideally something that's disruptive for your opponent and that does not clog your own locations. The Goblins are pretty popular in this list as well, Green Goblin as well as Hobgoblin. Following either of them up with Galactus on the same location makes it even harder for our opponent to contest that final location. And if you don't have Dr. Octopus, Knoll, and Destroyer, you can get creative with cards like Gamora, Spider-Woman, maybe even Leader, or just a high power bomb like Magneto or Hulk. And the last deck that I want to show you is a discard deck. Death doesn't really play an essential role here, but is a very nice supplementary card. The only real must-have here is Hela, since our whole deck is built around discarding expensive stuff from our hand and then cheating all of those cards out with Hela at the end of the game. So all we really need when building this deck is a couple of discard cards, so discard activators. We already have access to Lady Sif, Swordmaster, as well as Blade early on. So if we don't have cards like Hellcow, Invisible Woman, or Absorbing Man, we can just get more of those discarders into our deck. Moon Knight and Gambit are also legitimate tech choices. Colleen Wing can be helpful as well. All of these other big cards can technically be replaced as well. The reason why Death is very neat in this deck though is that Lady Sif always targets Death as a discard target, which means the odds of discarding Hela accidentally in the early game are much lower. So Captain Marvel can easily be replaced with something like Gamora, Spider-Woman, Arrow, just a high power 5-drop. And Magneto could also be the Hulk, or if you already have something like Giganto, that's even better. Another card that is really nice to have here, but not an absolute must, is Ghost Rider. It can smooth out a lot of hands where you accidentally discard Hela early on. You can either bring her back and still activate her effect, or at least bring one of the other big cards back. And Absorbing Man is a flexible tool. If you have him, it's great. You can copy Jubilee or Ghost Rider or a discard effect. If not, just put another discard card in there. It's gonna be fine. This deck is especially super strong in lower ranks because your opponents just won't know what to expect and they won't really expect the huge power spike that you'll have late. And it also gives you the control of snapping because you know whether or not you have Hela and what stakes you ultimately want to play for. So especially at lower collection levels, at lower ranks, definitely a solid choice for climbing and also a super fun and hilarious deck to play. So these are all of the strong death decks that I could think of. If you think I forgot anything, feel free to let me know in the comments. Also, don't be afraid to experiment around with tech choices. Most of the times, if you're missing a card or two, it doesn't matter at all. Just replace them with anything else you would like, especially if those replacements are good in the current meta. Also, if this video was helpful to you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing more of these guides and upload lots of deck ideas and gameplay to my channel, and it would really help me out as well.